we are.
Small group, hi, welcome. I am Radhika Kandelwal. I go by Rad. I'm the new Intercultural Engagement Director, and new to the team. It's my third week in, so hello. And before we get started, I'd just like to say out loud PCC's land and labor acknowledgement to really ground ourselves in the privilege of the time and space we're in. Pasadena City College is a learning community within the indigenous homelands of people who have been known as the Gabrieleno Band of Mission Indians of the Shishikwanga Village and Kish Nation. This afternoon, we acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this land on which we gather. PCC and its faculty, staff, and students recognize that we are all simultaneously teachers, learners, and guests on these lands. This acknowledgement is a small part of an ongoing process of working to raise awareness about histories that are too often erased or forgotten, to recognize our place in this history, and to affirm our commitment to social justice, systemic change, and anti-racism. We also honor the legacy of the African diaspora and recognize that the United States, as we know it, was built on the often fatal expense of forcefully enslaved Black people. We are indebted to their labor and the labor of many Black and brown bodies that continue to work in the shadows for our collective benefit. We acknowledge the forced and exploited labor of the Chinese immigrants who built railroads that allowed for westward American development, Japanese Americans whose properties and livelihoods were taken from them while incarcerated during World War II, and migrant workers from the Philippines, Mexico, and Central and South America who have worked Pacific Northwest farms and canneries. And finally, we recognize the immigrant and American-born workers of African, Asian, and Central and South American descent whose labor remains hidden in the shadows but still contributes to the well-being of our collective community. Now I am very excited to announce Chloe Davis, author of The Queen's English, the Dictionary for LGBTQIA+ Lingo and Colloquial Phrases. Chloe O. Davis is a Broadway performer and debut author who works in the entertainment industry in New York. Welcome to the Best Coast. A graduate of Hampton University and Temple University, she has centered her creative platform on amplifying the narratives of Black culture and heightening the awareness of the LGBTQIA+ community. She also leads important DEI discussions for organizations and corporations like Apple, VMLY&R, COCO, and the University of Kansas Medical Center. Davis's work as a dancer, actor, and creative has allowed her to travel to all 50 states and internationally, in addition to performing at premier theaters across the country, such as New York City Center, the Apollo Theater, the Kennedy Center, is it Muni? And the Berkeley Repertory Theater. She has appeared on PBS's great performances at the Met, the Gershwin's Porgy, and Bess, Jesus Christ Superstar Live in Concert on NBC, and Southern Landscape performed by the Philadelphia Dance Company. In tandem with performing, Davis spent 15 years researching, writing, and creating The Queen's English, the LGBTQIA+ Dictionary of Lingo and Colloquial Phrases. She believes this dictionary is a starting point for important conversations around inclusivity, sexuality, gender expression, and identity. Her work has been featured on BBC, The Wendy Williams Show, and was a Barnes & Noble Pride book pick. Chloe, it's great to have you here. I want to acknowledge, like I said, this is us. This is us in this space.
Thank you.
So, I'm excited because this means a truly authentic conversation with you, Q&A, and you leading us through,
Let's do it.
So let's do it.
Here, I'm gonna come up for a little bit. I don't need a mic. I think I'm okay. I'm gonna stand up a little bit, but I think eventually we're gonna have a conversation. So I'm gonna eventually turn chairs into this space. But thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you for including me in your Pride Month events. I think that is very exciting. I absolutely advocate for understanding the diversity of identity, right? And well, what does that mean? It just means we are all quite unique, and there's intersectionality in our identities. And then there's also language that articulates those experiences. And what I want to do is advocate for us first celebrating the language, making sure the language is represented, but then also celebrating it. So basically learning more about ourselves and also making sure that we are learning more about each other, right? So this is going to be very intimate, which I'm excited about, so I'm just gonna sit up front. A little bit about me, thank you for that introduction, is I am a storyteller. I like to start with that end because I like to, whether it be use my body or use my choreography or, hi, come on in. It's intimate, so we're just gonna kind of like be in the space.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we're just getting started. But I'm a storyteller and I like to use my art in diverse ways, whether it be through my writing or my dance or my choreography or just thought process. I love creativity and I love storytelling and I love sharing people's stories. And I'm very captivated in the stories that dive into our humanity, but more so dive into the multiple communities and cultures that we have, particularly here in the United States. And so the Queen's English is a celebration of the spectrum of humanity. So that means it's stories that represent the varied ways that we identify, right? So a lot of times, you know, when we think of identity, sometimes we think of what? We think of someone's, I'm pointing up here. So what if I'm saying someone's identity, what would live up here? What part of someone's identity would be if it's up here in our minds? What we believe ourselves to be. What do you think?
Their self-identity.
Their self-identity, right? Or we can say gender identity, right? Okay, now if I can say there's another part of identity, there's something called, you know, particularly when a doctor assigns us something at birth, right? A lot of times because we've lived in this heteronormative society and we live amongst these binaries, you know, a lot of times back in the day it was very much, or even now, but it's very much like it's a girl, it's a boy, right? But we understand that, and that's based off of someone's sexual anatomy, right? So instead of saying it's a girl, it's a boy, what I like to encourage language around that is to say someone was assigned female at birth or someone is assigned male at birth, AFAB or AMAB, right? But what about another assignment? Does anyone think, particularly if I say LGBTQI, what do we think that I stands for? What do you think?
Intersex.
Exactly, intersex, right? So that's another one, you can be assigned intersex at birth, right? So assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth, assigned intersex at birth, that's all about our sexual anatomy. That's one part of our identity, right? Sure. But is it all of our identity? Does it, because of what we're assigned at birth, does that depict like our gender identity or our gender expression or our attraction? Exactly, no, right? It's one part. So the other part that I was saying, what lives up here is our gender identity. Now, sometimes there is a correlation between what we were assigned at birth and what we believe ourselves to be. Like are we living in womanness? Are we living in maleness? Are we living in a non-binary world? Are we living in being agender, meaning not identifying with any type of gender? Do we identify with multiple genders, like pangender or polygender, right? Pan meaning all, poly meaning many. Do we identify as being trigender? You know, there's so many ways, but our gender identity is what lives up here. That means what we authentically believe ourselves to be. Sometimes it could be very aligned with this a very heteronormative idea of the binaries, right? If someone was assigned female at birth and also identifies with womanness or girlness or femininity or femaleness, right? Then that's someone's called cisgender. So about me, you know, I'm going to give all of my layers in a minute, but particularly for me, I was assigned female at birth. I identify with being a woman, so that means I'm cisgender, right? What about someone who was assigned male at birth, however, their identity is also woman? So what will we call that individual? What's that gender identity?
Trans woman.
Trans woman, exactly. Yeah, we can have trans woman or trans feminine or trans girl, exactly, meaning just,
Right. I didn't want to interrupt your sentence. What's the difference between, because you said assigned male at birth, what's the difference between feels female, maybe I'm jumping 6 steps ahead here.
No.
What's the difference between feels female and now that they have told you that they are a woman, as opposed to feels female?
I feel like there's not a difference. I just know in my articulation of what I was saying before.
Yeah, there was a specific, and I lost it as soon as I asked the question.
No.
But
No problem. Let's jump on that for a second. I think in my explanation, I am opening up the scope to not pinpoint identities. It's just, this could be an opportunity of just saying someone could, I'm using these words because womanness or femaleness or femininity or, female adjacent, like these are just ways and terms of using to describe a certain type of what could traditionally be woman, right? But I like to open it up to a varied way of explaining that because everybody's journey with woman or girl is different. So that's why I like to put that scope in as far as explaining.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Specific to your dictionary, specific to wanting to be open, and specific to the individual person. So I just had 3 all at once, and I was like,
yeah, no, and I love, no, thanks for that question, because I think we're going to dive in that a little bit more.
Great.
But yes,
We'll get there.
it could be transgender woman, right? So someone who was assigned male at birth, however, identifies as a woman,
Yeah.
right? Or identifies with an aspect of femininity, right? So it can be trans woman or trans girl or trans feminine, right? Those are different ways of exploring someone's journey with their transness, right? So I'm giving a binary too. I'm giving cisgender and I'm giving transgender, right? But then there's also the component of someone who is assigned female, assigned male, assigned intersex, however, but also feels that their gender identity may not be of the binary, right? It may not be of, again, I'm saying womanness or maleness, or you know what I mean? It may be something where it's a fluidity, right? And what does that look like? It is an exploration of course, the binaries, right? Of masculine and femininity, but also an exploration of what another gender could feel like for them, right? So that's a way to say it. So it's basically our gender identity is who we believe ourselves to be. And the beautiful thing about identity and the journey, it's always evolving, right? So who we are at one stage of life could absolutely change in the other, and could absolutely change in the other, right? And so that's why I like to encourage that identity is ever evolving. And when we have language to help us articulate those experiences, then that also helps us evolve in that, right? So then we have something called gender expression. So what do we think that is? And what's the difference between gender identity and gender expression? What do we think gender expression is?
Creative side.
I love this, yes. Or we can also say how the outside views us. Like, what do we show the outside, right? If gender identity is on the inside, how do we show that externally, right? So it could be someone could have a more masculine flavor to them, or feminine, or mask of sensual, or femme of sensual, or androgynous, right? Androgynous meaning like a combination of masculine and femininity, or again, like a flux or fluid of identities. Or just, I love this word, gender bender, or gender fuck. Like these are interesting words that manipulate the constructs of what we think gender alignment should look like in a very stereotypical way, meaning I'm meaning of the binaries, right? But gender expression is like, how do we show ourselves, right? Okay, one more, and then I want to introduce myself, and I want to give space so we can introduce ourselves using words that feel affirming, right? And we can also have this dictionary I'm going to pass around. Another aspect, I'm talking about a quadrant here. There's more aspects to our identity, but a basic quadrant. We talk about our attraction. So what do we think that part is? Does our attraction have to correlate with our gender identity? Do you think it has to correlate with our gender expression? No? Okay, so what kind of attractions do we have? I'm saying plural because we have many attractions. What kind of attractions do we have? No wrong answer. What kind of attractions?
I love my dad.
Huh?
I love my dad.
You love your dad, right? So it's platonic, right? What about another attraction?
Are we talking about like external or?
It could be any, yeah, just what kind of attractions. I think I'm open to this conversation because a lot of times we think that it just has to be your sexuality, your physical attraction. Sure, that's one, right? Like our physical attraction to someone. So that could be, someone could be heterosexual, someone could be homosexual or gay. We like to say that more so than homosexual. Someone can be bisexual, that's me. Someone can be pansexual, again, attraction to many genders, gender expressions, gender identities, you know. But that is one, that's physical attraction. What's another attraction though? We have platonic, we have physical, that's another one. Emotional, or we can say romantic, right? That falls in the romantic scope. Like for me, I'm bisexual, I'm bi-romantic, right? So meaning I can have sexual attraction to or physical attraction to more than one gender, or I can also have a romantic attraction, because romantic and physical can be they're separate. We know, we're adults here, right? We know. You be like, I'm a physical attraction. It's like, yes. Romantic, don't touch me. You know what I mean? Like, because someone absolutely could be even like heterosexual. Someone can be heterosexual, right? But also be aromantic, meaning they just don't have those connections when it comes to that emotional romantic attachment. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But it's just, that's not for them. That's not their part of their identity makeup, right? Or someone could be, let's say someone can be pansexual, right? Physically attracted, openness to whoever, but could be homo-romantic, meaning their focus is only on someone of the same gender as them, right? So that's why I said there's different types of attraction, and again, it shows the complexity of our identity, right? Platonic as well, you know what I mean? That it just all fits. There's also relationship attraction. What do we think that is, a relationship attraction?
Friend over a best friend?
Or yes, because there is a word called queer platonic relationship, which is basically a connection with someone that is not necessarily you've gone to the physical aspect of it or the romantic aspect of it, but it's beyond just a friendship, right? It's like this gray area, and I love that word because I feel like we have lots of those relationships. That's like that's spot on, like queer platonic. I'm like, yeah, I have some of those relationships, right? But also when I say your relationship attraction, I talk about a lot about like, is it monogamous or is it polyamorous? You know what I mean?
Across the bar, we like your vibe.
That's right. You know, like where are you? You know, or is it fluid? You know, is it depending on the partnership or the stage in life or, you know, all of the things. But that's also a part of our, you know, who we are and our makeup. And I think we don't talk about that a lot. I'm sharing all this because we see the depths of identity, right? Already in just these 4 quadrants. But it's a lot of times it's not something we really dove into or talked about or had resources to really celebrate it in a way. You know, it's a way that sometimes it's like, oh, it's not heteronormative. I use that word a lot because it's just meaning that our society for a long time has been built on this construct of binaryism. Male, masculine, female, you know, female with femininity, gay or straight, or black or white. Like there's these binaryisms that's happening, but that's not always the case because we're so layered, we're so complex. So another part of our identity is, you know, again, like our race, our religion, our beliefs, our traditions, our language, our culture, you know, first generation, second generation, mixed race. Like all of these aspects are also part of who we are. And a lot of times, you know, we cannot exclude one without the other. So it's the intersectionality of identity that is really important and sometimes can get misunderstood or misconstrued, you know what I mean? So when I talk about the intersectionality of my identity, just sharing, so I'm Chloe, right? I go by she, her pronouns. I am a proud black, bisexual, demisexual, biromantic, cisgender woman who my gender expression is definitely femme, but sometimes it's a bit androgynous, as I have on my little loafers right now, right? Like I just like to play with what feels good, you know, and these are labels that make me feel good. In addition to being a creative, being a storyteller, being a dancer, being a writer, you know, these are all layers of who I am, right? And I'm a foodie. I love great wine. I love great bourbon. So again, these are layers of my identity, what makes me feel good. So what I would love us to do is just kind of, if we choose, you know, everyone doesn't have to, but if anyone wants to choose to explore words that say who you are. And I do this because this is a part about building community. A lot of times we look at each other and we see someone at face value. Like we just say, oh, I just can make an assumption, I can make an assumption, I can make an assumption. But it's not until we truly articulate our experiences and say, oh, but this is who I am, where people are like, oh. And then it's like, well, I didn't know that. Well, of course you didn't know until we're at a space of where I can share with you. But I also feel like when we share, things that are important to us and who we are, that's how we build community, and that's how we build spaces, whether it be within our families, whether it be within our workplaces, our educational systems, our healthcare systems, where we can now build community, where we are pushing forward and making sure that everyone's seen, heard, valued. And we can also use language that's appropriate to those experiences, right? So anyone want to start? Anyone want to share a little bit? Not all at once.
My name is Nat,
Okay.
and I'm non-binary. I use they, them pronouns. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Anybody else?
I'm Radhika Kandelwal. I go by Rad, mostly because folks could not pronounce Radhika for the longest time, and I didn't have the wherewithal to actually explain to people how to say my name. So now, and PCC is a beautiful place because I feel like this is a space where I can reclaim Radhika, so I'm trying to practice that more for myself, but I love Rad because it's awesome, tubular. My identity in lots of ways, right? Embody radness. I go by she, her pronouns, cisgender, straight, woman. Most of the time, romantically attracted to my husband. Right now, having some feelings. Joking. Mother. I identify deeply with my South Asian, Indian identity. I think there are different times when my female and woman identity feel more salient to me, and many times where my Indian identity feel more salient. I find a lot of solace and direction in Hinduism, so I identify with my faith a lot. And I think one of the dopest identities that I'm exploring and really enjoying right now is that of a mother. I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old at home that I'm mostly into. Yeah. And an educator. That's a huge part of my identity too. An educator, yeah.
You guys want to share?
I go, my
Okay.
name's Sadie.
Mhm.
I go by she, her, ella. A lot of my identity is being, family. I'm a foodie as well. I enjoy being a plant mom. I don't have actual kids, but I do have a dog, being a dog mom as well. And I am, just enjoying kind of going through life.
Anybody else? You don't have to, but.
I'm Mallory. I use she, her pronouns. I am a queer/bi cisgender woman, demi-romantic. I don't know, or demi-romantic, demisexual. I don't know, something romantic. I am a word nerd. I am a nerd. I like books. I like reading. I like my family. I like my cats. I identify with learning a lot about diversity and intersectionality. It's the culture that I was raised up in along with academia, and this is really important to me to better myself because being in a diverse space as a white, straight, apparently able-bodied, apparently able-bodied, invisible illness woman navigating the world, you have to understand that people are going to, and this helps me learn that other people don't have that luxury.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
I'll jump in.
I love it. We're sharing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I have a habit of over talking sometimes, so I'm like, I let everybody
No,
go.
safe space, safe space.
Overshares.
My name is Joanna. She, her, ella. I adopted ella when I started, and everything started because I'm bilingual, Spanish and English. So I figured if I say ella, it kind of then people can notice and say, oh, then she speaks Spanish as well. So that's my way of identifying that I'm bilingual. There's a lot to me. I identify as bi. I'm also a mother, so I'm in my 40s. So my daughter's 23, and so she knows a lot. We're very open with each other. We communicate very openly. So it's kind of like what we were talking about, kind of like the best friend kind of relationship with her, rather than just a mother-daughter relationship. I guess you could say I identify as also of mixed race. I am Korean and Guatemalan. Most of my ways are Korean. However, I've adopted a lot of Guatemalan culture due to my mother and my father's upbringings. My Korean is more because that's where I feel that I suit myself more. As well as my daughter, she's like, you've raised me more Korean than anything, based on my structure, I guess, and discipline. I travel between growing up in California, but then living in Illinois, so I'm Midwest. Been out there since COVID opened up, so kind of like, I guess you could say I'm bi-state livage. I don't know. That's another way of identifying. I live in 2 different states. And I'm just a very creative person, so I don't really see myself anywhere, but more like multi. So it's a little difficult, but then listening to the fact that you've written a dictionary might help settle some identities in there. And I think that it's one of the things that first came to mind is like, no, I think I need to read that before I identify it any further.
Oh no, and we're gonna
because it helps a lot, and I've learned a lot in these few years of living in the Midwest in Illinois, because I'm at the Capitol in Springfield, and so the difference of culture there, of the community, versus the difference of culture of the community here, very different, and sometimes I feel like I might be a little too open for them.
We'll talk about that as well. Yeah.
And so that's where I'm just like, learning from that community, I've come to the point of not sharing too much now.
Understood. Yeah. We're exactly a safe space of where you can share and be your authentic self.
Definitely.
I went to school at SWIC.
Sorry?
I went to school at SWIC, Southwestern Illinois College.
Oh, I was over at University of Illinois Springfield, right at the Capitol. Yep.
My name is Greg.
Hi, Greg.
He, him. I identify, well, masculine, straight. I identify as a dad, as a friend, as a lover of all. And I just want to be a fly on the wall and learn today.
Yeah. Thank you. This is my friend from St. Louis. We're both from St. Louis.
Midwest.
Midwest.
Hour and a half away.
Yeah. So
Been there.
So I love this. So I got us in this conversation, right? Because I wanted us to actually see the diversity of identity that just lives right here. You know what I mean? Things that have been said and things that have not have been said. You know, the reason why I created this dictionary is because I started it in 2006. I was in a dance company, and a lot of my friends were part of the ballroom scene. I'm sure we know what the ballroom scene right now is because we have RuPaul's Drag Race. We have like Pose or Legendary, maybe you saw that on television. Or even you're familiar with Paris is Burning, which is a beautiful documentary that dives into the ballroom scene in the 1990s, right? But if you're not familiar with that, I'm sure you've even heard words like slay or read or over or shady, you know, and whether it was introduced to us, or even Vogue, whether it introduced to us by like pop stars like Madonna or Beyonce, or we even heard it on like MSNBC or CNN or some, you know, or even a television show. Well, these words came from a community of mostly Black, but Black and Latinx or Latini, trans, gay, queer individuals who needed to create a space and also language that sublimated their self-worth, right? Because of all of the discrimination or prejudice or phobias going against them, right? And so a lot of my friends were part of the ballroom scene. So another thing, being part of the dance community or the entertainment community, you know, I grew up with hearing work all the time, you know, even before it became like the craze in the 2020s. But, you know, just knowing that this language comes from the ballroom scene. And the ballroom scene is a space where mostly Black, gay, and trans people came to create a space that was safe, that supplemented their self-worth, that dived into their identity, the variation of their identity, and being able to live in it in its very authentic way, and an unapologetic way, right? So language was created to say, this is how we're celebrating our community. And what I found was it was very intriguing. And so when I knew words, but then I was like, well, what does this word mean? It was a word like snatch, and actually snatch means like the body is together, it's very lean, or somebody is getting snatched, meaning they're getting nice and tight, and the body is looking right? So over time, I would ask what certain words meant, and my friends would be like, they would explain it, they would talk about it. Now, a lot of times, when we think slang, I'm saying slang now, but it's not, it's a lexicon. It's a lexicon that literally dives into a community. So that means it is part of humanity, right? If this is the way I articulate experience because of my culture, my beliefs, my belief system, and my values, then this language isn't slang. This language is just my lexicon, right? But I say slang because a lot of times when we try to define words that maybe aren't academic, we use other words that could be slang. So what I did was I would listen and I would just playfully try to think or become a lexicographer and think of like, oh, do you mean this? And I would give this academic definition. And it was for fun, actually. But over time, I want to say I was starting to collect like 50 terms, and then it was like 100 terms. And I was like, wow, we're on to something. And I was like, there needs to be a dictionary for this. And one of my friends challenged me to write it, and they said, well, when you do, call it the Queen's English. So that's how it got its name. However, that was like the first phase of me doing this. And over time, I think when we dive into something that we like, then sometimes it dives into a purpose. I think also I was going through a time, I grew up I'm gonna throw my age out there, but I grew up in a time where bisexuality just wasn't a thing. It was very much an erasure. It was very much you had to choose between being gay or straight. And that just wasn't my experience, but I had to choose, and I just felt uncomfortable. And so I was like, well, who am I, and what are words to help me articulate those experiences? When I tried to dive into spaces and resources, it wasn't there. It was very, we talk about heteronormativity, but there's also something called homonormativity, right? Where we're very focused on the binaryism of just being gay and lesbian. And also on top of that, not truly representing, I talk about that intersectionality of race. It was very much white focused, white, gay, and lesbian people. And that was the language. And truth be told, if I'm learning about all this language from the ballroom scene, predominantly Black, gay and trans people, then there's just an imbalance, right? So then what I realized, I said, okay, not only do I see that there's not a resource that articulates or helping me articulate my experience, but there's also not a resource that is advocating for the varied ways that we all experience identity, right? So it's not just about being Black, but again, what about being, South Asian? What about, being, also from Guatemala, from, being from that community? But also what about age, and what about experiences that are that don't align with binary gender, like being non-binary? What about those experiences, and where's the language that articulates those experiences? So then it just became very broad and open, and I was just on a hunt to dive into and unfold the many ways we identify. So the Queen's English is actually a celebration of over 800 terms used to describe our collective LGBTQI+ experiences. I dived into many cultures. Lesbian culture, yes, but what about the Black lesbian culture? What about the white lesbian culture? Even words from knowing that in the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s, before the word lesbian was even in our vocabulary, the word bulldagger and bulldyke was created. And it articulated experience to say, I'm a woman and I like another woman. Or it says, I am a woman, but I have a masculine gender expression. You know what I mean? So words like bulldagger, bulldyke was created in the 1920s. Even do we know like Ma Rainey, Bessie Smith? Do you know those, the jazz blues singers? No? Well, we should definitely look them up because it's great. But it's groundbreaking. Ma Rainey actually wrote a song in the 1920s talking about her love for another woman. You know what I mean? And that was like groundbreaking that, because we have to also remember in the 1920s is that, you know, and even earlier and a little bit beyond after, is that, you know, it was a crime. It was a crime to wear any article of clothing that didn't align with your supposedly gender or sex, right? It was a crime. If you were found in, if men were found in skirts or wore lipstick or anything like that, it was a crime if women were found in trousers. You know what I mean? So it was for someone to be out and open and say, oh, I'm a bull dyke or I'm a bull dagger, that was very monumental, right? And then we can fast forward to the 1940s, like again, before the word lesbian came about in the 1940s in the white lesbian gay bars, I say it, but the word butch femme binary was created, right? And that was to articulate experiences that say, I'm attracted to a woman, and but I feel more masculine, butch, or I'm attracted to a woman, and I feel more feminine. That's the femme, right? But then you had the Kiki girls, who were actually like outcast. How dare someone like someone just for who they are? But that back then, it's like you had to, even then when you were trying to push the envelope to say identity is expansive, we were still in this binary world, right? So the Kiki girls basically was like, I don't care, I like whoever. But then they were outcast because of that. But that's when understanding where kind of language was coming from. You know, then we can fast forward into, you know, the gay male world, right? And particularly the white gay males, right? And learning about words like otters and wolves and bears and twinks and twunks, right? The animal kingdom. But that's just body labels. And it's playful, but these are body labels that are used, right? Or we go into, you know, also we have like stud and soft stud and things like that. These are languages that come from the lesbian black community. But then you also have words like, you know, zucchini that comes from, you know, those who are part of the asexual or aromantic communities, right? And that means like that's their type of partner, how they would articulate their partner as a zucchini or a squish or a squash, you know what I mean? Like words like that where there's not this attachment, but that's still like to identify their partner. Or we go into the TGNC community, transgender non-conforming communities, or the binary communities, and exploring what those identities are, right? Because there's,
Can you go back to zucchini?
yes, zucchini. You know what? I think it's great.
I've heard of a lot of these things. So
Yes.
some of them I understand the realm of it.
Yes.
But I got lost there.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna actually pass around this book.
That's where squish,
And then-
squash come from.
Yes. And so actually, I'm gonna flip to zucchini.
I thought these were pet names. I don't know.
No, I'm gonna actually flip the zucchini, and then if you don't mind reading it, the definition.
Please.
Okay. So let's go to Y and Z.
Oh,
So I'm passing around two different dictionaries, and it's going to actually tell you to go to Queer Platonic. But this is the first edition. This was came out, and it's all bold and beat up because these are the very first time I held my book. That's the copy, and so people have written in them, and the same thing with this one. So that came out in 2021. This came out in April 2024. This is the young readers version. And I love both of them, and I think they're both for everyone. But let's have you read zucchini, and then it's also going to tell you to go to Queer Platonic. So let's read both of those.
Okay.
Okay.
Zucchini is a noun, a partner in a queer platonic relationship. The term queer platonic.
Mm-hmm.
And then where's that one? Sorry.
So then we'll probably have to flip through and go to Q
Oh, I
for
see. Like a dictionary.
You good? Yeah. So as you flip through the book too, it's very colorful. It's engaging with like illustrations. It has the pride flags, the many different pride flags, because we know there's more than one. Yeah,
In 4 years, you needed a new edition.
I did.
And identity and labels and
Expansion.
assessing needs found out that it needed a young reader's
That's
edition.
right. Exactly.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
There's a whole nother lecture on the 4 years that you did that.
Yeah.
That's crazy
Thank you.
and wonderful.
Thank you.
So there's two here. There's
Okay.
queer platonic partner and queer platonic relationship.
Maybe we do both of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're both nouns. A partner in a queer platonic relationship. The term squish or zucchini can also be used. The term may be abbreviated as QP or QPP. A queer platonic relationship is a noun, an extremely close, passionate attachment between two friends that has a strong emotional connection that may be extended beyond the boundary of a normal friendship. These relationships do not develop into a romantic partnership. A person in a queer platonic relationship can be called a queer platonic partner, squish, or zucchini.
Yeah. Any other, and then there's also kind of examples, like in the dictionary, there's like how do you use it, it's like a synonym, and also there's like a usage note. Is there a usage note attached to one of those saying?
Yeah,
okay.
there's a usage note actually for a queer platonic partner.
Okay.
And then, I'm going to read it. Quote below it. It says, quote, Victoria and I have been in the same class since kindergarten. We're like the same person. She knows exactly what I'm thinking, and sometimes we finish each other's sentences. We support and love each other as queer platonic partners. Usage note. This term originated in the asexual and aromantic communities. It has been appropriated by some members of the larger LGBTQIA+ community.
And so I think it's also what's important is that there's a diversity of language that's in there because it's coming from the communities. And I think with this platform, I was very adamant about making sure language that was created by certain individuals or communities were able to have it pinpoint to say, this is our language. Because a lot of times within the whole scope of the LGBTQIA+ community, it's like language gets appropriated. And sometimes language is used flippantly, sometimes language is used with malice. Like, when we think of the etymology of the word queer, right? And we think of the etymology now that I've told you where bull dyke and bull dagger came from, right? No malice there, but over time, words are used that put a derogatory or even pejorative flair on someone's identity. And it's interesting with the word queer is because it used to just first mean like odd or, peculiar, and then over time, it became like a derogatory word to identify someone who was gay. But then in the 1980s, during the HIV and AIDS crisis, then it was reacclaimed or reappropriated to say, oh, I'm taking this word back and I'm empowering it and giving it a certain meaning that is empowering to my community. Now you cannot use it. And so that's why when we say the word queer, as we use it and identify, now it's this all-encompassing phrase or word that talks about something that is just non-heteronormative, whether it be non-heterosexual or whether it just be non-cisgender, right? But to show the fluidity of someone's identity or expression. But it is because of those layers of a community saying, okay, I'm gonna change its reference, is now why we have younger generations or generations now using it, right? And that is now, it used to be gay as the all catchphrase of like something to be inclusive of the community. Now we say queer, it feels appropriate. And it's so interesting too, we talk about different experiences with language, because I like to tell the story that there is this organization called SAGE, right? SAGE is an organization that promotes the voices of older, senior LGBTQI+ people, right? Making sure that their voices are heard. So we're talking about people in their 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, right? Their experience with queer is not the same experience as somebody who is 10 or 20 or sometimes even 30, right? So it was a conversation because SAGE did not want to put LGBTQ as their subliner because they did not feel affirmed with the word queer. However, it was a wonderful conversation with older LGBTQI+ individuals as well as younger LGBTQI+ individuals, and them sharing their experience, shared information. Them saying, when the word queer was used on me, it was used with malice. It made me feel inferior. It made me feel not, able to stand firmly in my identity, Then, and that's heard, but then you have a younger generation to say, well, actually queer makes me feel so empowering because it's a word that helps me articulate the journey of my experience, and I'm not limited to just having to use these labels that don't feel right to me. Queer does. But in this conversation of both individuals understanding the perspective, there's a community agreement to say, oh, well, now that I know that this makes you feel like this, we have evolved. And because of that, I support you in your identity, right? So it means like, not everyone uses language the same way, and we all have different interpretations of what that is, right? And I think it's about us celebrating what those interpretations are, but also hearing each other and understanding what words feel empowering and words that don't. So that way we can move forward together to say, okay, yes, in our space we're going to use this, or in our space we're not. And it was a community agreement to say, yes, in our space we will now use it because I understand that it feels empowering. You know, so that's the word queer. On the word dyke, you know, which I was going to do some pride trivia, so maybe I won't use this example. But over time, dyke was also reacclaimed, right? Who knows the organization Dykes on Bikes? Yeah, and it was founded actually in San Francisco Pride Parade back in the 70s, right? But it's this word to say, we're gonna reclaim this, and we're gonna say, we're gonna stand in our masculinity and also stand in our lesbianism, and it's gonna feel right. But those are somehow, like, some of the reasons why it's important to have, like, resources to help articulate those experiences. You know, and that's what I also did with the dictionary. So it's not just about, it's a plethora of words coming from so many communities, the diversity of communities. And also to show the intersectionality of experiences, right? When I talk about language that comes from the white gay community versus the black lesbian community versus, you know, versus our younger queer community, right? There's language that evolves from all of those spaces. But then also, we cannot dismiss the history of a word. You know, we can't whitewash and we can't diffuse history, because then we create erasure, and that's what we don't want to do either. We learn from our history, we talk about it, we articulate it, but we don't erase it, because then we're erasing identities that need to live on, right? So those are just some of the aspects, yes.
And this is appropriation versus appreciation?
Exactly, I love that you said this, yes, I say this all the time. There's a lot of times where appropriation happens, and sometimes it's done with malice and sometimes it's done unconsciously, right?
Yeah.
A lot of language in the queer community has been appropriated. You know, like I said, a lot of times when I hear news reporters say, oh, that was shady, or throwing shade, or oh, that was a read, I just kind of giggle a little bit, because it's like, you know, you're using it, sure, but do you know where it's coming from? And you know, if someone's listening to this word and hearing you say it, but the face doesn't represent where it actually comes from, you know, that can kind of create erasure. And so with the dictionary, I wanted to really make sure that we have a space, an opportunity, and a platform to say, these words come from this community. So forever and forevermore, that we can honor that. Now, appreciation doesn't mean we can't use a word, right? It's not like we can have a word police out here to say, oh, you can't use this word because it doesn't come from your community. It's not that. It's just understanding that when you're using the word, you're knowing where it comes from, you are respecting where that comes from, and you are empowering the community and the individual from where it comes from. That's appreciation. And if we do that with diligence, then yes, we use the words, but we're already using it in a different manner. Because we're also using the word, we're giving information, we're honoring the people where it comes from. So that's my thing about appropriation and appreciation. Appropriation also comes from, for instance, like capitalism, right? Like when we see H&M having like wear spag boots, or, you know, having, you know, labels and things on their shirts and selling them, you know. But what about like where capitalism, like how are we able to like give back to the community that needs it? Because you have to think like, I don't like saying marginalized communities, I can say most vulnerable communities or underrepresented communities, right? A lot of times we're experiencing the histories and the words and the traditions of underrepresented communities. Let's talk about even a book in particularly, right? Like a lot of times we're not able, being a black person, you know, if we talk about like the discrimination and racism and prejudice that has been experienced, we weren't even able to put our knowledge in books because we didn't have publishers that were going to do it. And honestly, the Queen's English is pretty groundbreaking because this is a book published by, whether it be Simon & Schuster or Penguin Random House, but this is them also having a platform for now queer language to be able to have a platform to say, yes, this is true, you know, this is for a community, so erasure doesn't continue to be, to happen, you know, not to say it won't, but happen in such bold ways. You know, so it's like, language is a tool to identify oneself. Language is used to articulate experiences that maybe society had not done it in a way that felt right. And so that's what the Queen's English is about, celebrating the myriad of identities that we have and the intersectionality and the diversity of that. Here, so many, I love it. Okay, open it up. I think let's start with you guys.
And I've totally forgotten it. Say the last sentence again. Oh God.
When I'm saying mirrored language is a way to articulate our experiences?
Yes.
Okay.
The gender expression and the words that I use, the accepting person will hear them and use those words back to me, and we will create a safe space. What's the difference? What's your opinion? What's the read on the language that I use is for me to identify, and the language that I use is so that y'all can put me in a box that makes you feel comfortable.
I think that's always this like ebb and flow of that. I always like to say, first and foremost, each individual you are the only person that can articulate your experience. So the words that you use, that is value to who you are. That is authentic to who you are. So if I say these are the terms that I'm using to identify myself, then it should be an agreement that these are the terms I would like to also be used to be told about myself, right? You articulate your experiences. No one else can put labels on you that don't belong to you. Now people try, people do, you know what I mean? That's dead naming, misgendering, just prejudices, things of that nature. People do. But at the end of the day, I have the right to articulate my experience, no one else. And I do advocate for that. I try to continue to say that, like, encourage us as individuals to explore what those labels feel and to articulate those, but also for societies and communities to understand too, to get into the culture of listening and following. Meaning, like, if you've introduced yourself to me as such, then it is my duty, responsibility as a community member, as society, to say, okay, then I need to make sure I respect that, right? So back to what you're saying, when you're using labels or no labels, right? Let's talk about that. Some people, we don't need labels. I don't use labels, right? But it is a respect to say, this is who I am, this is how I articulate, and this is what I want to be known as, so please respect me in such, right? And so that is coming from us to them. Now, also, I get what you're saying too. Labels can also say, okay, this is where I am, so you feel comfortable in understanding my journey.
Yeah.
And that can happen too, absolutely. But I don't want us to ever feel as individuals that we have to have that responsibility to do that for someone. That is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is just to articulate our experiences to the best that we can, and then others just fall in line with what that is. Because again, identity is ever evolving, right? And we have to always encourage space for that. And I talk a lot about that, especially in my young readers version, because
They're still finding the words.
exactly, they're still finding the words, but we're still finding the words too.
I think if I can, because the question you asked was,
Go ahead.
there's a tangential relation to what I was thinking, which is, I love that we're talking about how LGBTQ language that is affirming, and like we've come to a place of affirmation, and at the same time I can't help but think like there is a lot of threat to the affirmation still, right? Increasingly, like in pockets of American society, there is alarming homophobia, queerphobia, transphobia, and not only are words continuing to be used in a pejorative sense, but identity is being threatened.
That's right.
And so, I think about like, not just if I'm describing myself, if I'm using certain identity markers, will that be honored? But the second piece, because I've just come from the K-12 space, so I can't tell you how many, we introduced pronouns to our students as like we're just going to normalize saying pronouns like 6 years ago. And I recall students saying, well, I'm a helicopter. Can I be called helicopter now, right? And so it's like this, and you can give the average adolescent some grace to be like, okay, we're going to work on this with you. But I know adults who will throw that back and be like, actually, I'm going to invalidate your identity by making a comment about and belittling identity. So I'm curious about like, we're still in a very precarious time right now, where there is threat to everything.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, how do we contend with that?
Yeah. So yeah, you wanna
Yeah,
No,
I think just
let's-
like to feel that as like a non-binary person who like people are like, I hear you, don't see you, not heard, right? Is that I see you, I hear what you're saying, I'm not gonna respect that though.
Yeah.
So I think this conversation of like what I'm trying to describe is like, this is how I'd like to be called, right? That's what I would like. At the end of the day, I'm not gonna lose sleep. Somebody else isn't gonna lose sleep. I can't control whatever's going on in their head, I can't control.
Absolutely.
But
I'm anxious, I want to control it.
Yeah.
yes, I feel that. And it's gonna be like an internal battle, right?
Yeah.
That's something that we'll continue to do. But I mean, as neo-pronouns really have come into the space as well, is that I think of it like a bottleneck, essentially, is that this is new. A few things are gonna fall out, right? It's like these terms maybe at first, right? And then eventually we come into it with a whole dictionary, right? To be able to describe our experiences. So as we navigate these spaces and people are coming in hot, right? They're saying, well, I'm a helicopter now. This is new information for them right there and then. And the way that they deflect is they don't want to look embarrassed. And so typically they choose the opposite. And so it sucks that we have to hold space for people.
Right.
But I think holding space for when I came out, for not only being queer, but also again a few laters coming out as non-binary to my family, is that they were mad. And I was like, okay, I'm just like trying to be me. Go off. But instead, eventually it turned into, oh, like defending my child. Like, this is my child. What do you mean? She's perfectly fine. And I'm like,
Hey.
So close.
but I'm like,
Right. But thank you. But
yes. Right, is that they're defensive, right? And so it's more of ignorance, and it's really hard to tell when someone is ignorant, or it's easy, I think, to tell when someone is ignorant versus malicious. And so picking your battles through that and having the space and time, 'cause it's not my job to educate people, but I'm representing non-binary.
That's right.
So when people meet you, right, when you go and travel to another country or something and you don't match, you're representing an entire race, so an entire community and things like that. And that's a heavy thing to carry, but you're not alone in that.
That's right.
And so this has been awesome. Thank you. So
Yeah, thank
dominate
you.
that.
And Gen Z, I've seen them on Twitter replying to, well, I go by helicopter. Every time they interact with that tweet again, it's a, hey, hi, Helly. How are you today, Helly? What a great day, Copter. How are you having, how was your dinner today, Copter?
It's like a play also on noun self. We were talking about neo-pronouns and noun self pronouns. But you know what I love what you're talking about. So here's the thing. I think we don't have control over everyone. That's fine. But that doesn't mean we stop. When you talk about resistance, when you talk about determination, when you talk about progress, it does not come without tension, but it comes with determination to move forward, right? And for me, my platform is education and resources. Because at the end of the day, I like what you said, a lot of people come from ignorance, and a lot of people come from fear. And a lot of people come from fear of change, or fear of not knowing, or fear of making a mistake, or it comes from fear, right? And so the thing about it is, not to say how can we massage that, but resources, education, putting it in hands of people who may not want to gravitate to it, but also putting it in a place that feels like you're learning. You're not being told what to do, but you're actually being immersed into a new experience and a new way of thought. Again, we've lived in social constructs for a very long time. It's very hard for us to undo those overnight. It's very hard for us to undo a lot in 50 years. I mean, let's talk about, the phobias. Let's talk about racism. Let's talk about the discriminations. Like, we're still in that world. Let's talk about the anti-LGBTQI+ laws that are happening now, particularly around our young trans youth, right? Like, so these moments of tension aren't going to change, but that doesn't mean we can't move forward. And I think it is about resources. I think it is about conversations. I think it is about shared experiences, because we're all walking a different shared experience right now. But because we're having a conversation, we are walking away with different information about different identities and the intersectionality of that. And what I want to do is continue to have these conversations, be a leader in that, but also build more leaders to do that, whether that be in their families, whether it be in their communities, etc.
You're bringing me back to like about almost a year and a half ago, when I was at UIS. I opened up actually about this. So I wrote down how you said not to use the word slang, rather lexicon. I was literally talking about that. They have a weekly talk. It's called Women of Color. So they bring topics, and women come and listen to topics. The majority of the topics are actually revolving around Black females. And so I'm just like, okay, well, I want to learn. I want to educate myself because perhaps you're going to teach me something I don't know, especially because I grew up here versus growing up in Illinois. So I'm attending these sessions, as they say, filling up a noggin and getting educated so I won't be part of that community of ignorance. And so they finished their topic and they asked, okay, thank you everybody for being here. We're going to start our new session next time and we want ideas. I brought up the idea about having a class to better understand the lexicon and the history and everything. It got to the point where don't know her identity, don't know her. I say her because it's female. Gets up and she felt insulted by my example, and to the point where she's like, if you know you're not supposed to use those terms, you shouldn't because you're white.
Well, that was an assumption, right?
And that's where I was like, oh, interesting. I'm literally trying to say, let's open up so we're not assuming, and she literally did that. But at the end of the day, I got in trouble by the director of this diversity center. I was the one in the wrong for opening up to the thought. And even when I explained myself to the director, his mind was closed and said, you need to apologize because you should have not said this. And I said, well, don't you think that maybe this is the reason why I said what I said in order to open up so we can all get educated? And so that way we don't have these kind of problems. We understand each other. We sympathize each other. We understand where we're all coming from. And he's like, no.
There are gonna, so truthfully, there are gonna be people who are just not gonna be on the bandwagon, and fine. But then there are people who want to, and so I think it's you say your piece and it's discernment, and we keep it moving. Now the backlash is harsh, and and no one likes that. But I think we have the other part about it too. It's like I created the book. And I have this goal that I envision that it flies places I never could imagine. You know what I mean? Like
I'm ready
that,
to take it over there.
It's like one of those things where it's like, okay, this is my contribution to this, and I think that's just what it is. Whatever your contribution to it is pure and it's direct and it goes where it needs to go. But there's going to be backlash, and when that comes, you can fight with it a little bit, or you say forget it because there's somebody else who will open that door. Or who wants to have that conversation. That's not the place. Maybe not then. Maybe now that it's different. And, I'm sorry that we do have to have that tension. And that is honestly a part of the journey, many of our journeys, because again, like when we have certain identities that are not of the privilege, of the power, of the elitist, of the normal, right? Then it comes with battles. It comes with the battle of being misunderstood. It comes with the battle of not being represented. It comes with the battle of not being seen, respected, all of those things. But if we think of, if our goal is to say, I want to feel affirmed in who I am, what are the steps, however small or big they are, we do those. And I think that's the conversations that I like to have. It's like, yes, it comes with tension. But there are people, many people who are like, I'm okay with being awakened. I'm okay with learning. I mean, we can even talk about your family. The resistance was there initially, right? But now it's it's like, no. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still learning. I'm still misgendering, yes. But at the end of the day, my heart is there, and eventually I'll learn. You know what I mean? We learn at different rates,
Yeah.
I think one more thing just to add to that, is that as we go on and we are curious, that is a great thing to be. You're going to meet people who don't want to meet your curiosity. And when you meet those people, it's not necessarily their job to educate you, but they could go about it better sometimes.
Yeah.
But the same thing for us is that us being in this room is that we're becoming educated. It is our duty to spread education, but also some days you don't have it in you. That's when you pass the mic. You pass it off to someone else and you say, actually, if you don't know about something, don't speak on it. If you find out that you don't know about something, stop speaking on it. And then you go, oh, actually, I don't know about that. I can't speak to that. And it's super easy and it deflects and it's not argumentative. It's just saying, I don't know enough information about this to share with you or to tell you something. But I know someone that might. Maybe we can look it up together or something like that. And maybe now's not the right time, but later is. I don't have the space right now.
Okay, I just looked at the time.
We are.
Okay, I love this, but okay, I'm gonna close it up. Let's do some pride trivia. Is that cool? Okay. All right. Do we want to do multiple choice, fill in the blank, or a little bit all?
Little law.
Okay. Oh, let's do this one.
Inclusive.
Let's do this one. This one's gonna be true and false. Okay. Many words like dyke, faggot, or queer that were once derogatory have been reclaimed by many members of the LGBTQI+ community and used as a badge of honor. Is this true or false?
True.
Oh, I heard this first. You get pride stickers. Okay. Somebody was learning.
Sitting over there quiet the whole session.
Yeah.
I have always thought the F word is off limits. Is that not so?
So we can read in the dictionary. So again, yes, to people outside of the community, particularly when it is used with malice. Anything that is used with malice are off limits. But there are words like dyke, faggot, queer that have been reclaimed by members of the community, and some people use that as a self-proclaim. You know, like faggot bug is like it was like a beetle, like a little beetle car, like it was named the faggot bug. You know, but it was like. And it was in a pride parade, but you know, it was just things of the like celebrating, again, taking words that were given with malice, that were pejorative, that was disruptive, but taking ownership of it and celebrating that. I'm sure on Sunday, you're gonna see some shirts, they say faggot, you know what I mean? But proud faggot or something like that, because it's more of a statement. It's more of a statement piece. And no, I agree, that's not something, like,
Not in Spanish. It's still bad.
Yeah, I believe, and what I'm saying is, it is still a term that people may not feel good about to say absolutely not. You know, within the community as well. But some people have changed that experience. But I would say too, if a person has not self-identified as such, then we don't use it, right? But if a person someone can self-identify as like a faggot. Or someone can self-identify as a dyke. Or someone even can self-identify as someone being transsexual, right? Like, sometimes it's like, oh, we don't want to say transsexual, we want to say transgender. But there is a woman who is like, no, I'm a transsexual woman. But that it's pride with that, right? So I think it's just one of those things that we use the terminology that people identify themselves as, and we go forward with that, not necessarily us putting labels on someone that has not given themselves that.
I'm going to use the wrong word. There was a person in the Pride Center who was using the term, I'm a woman of trans experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do not call me a trans woman.
That's another thing. That's personal journey.
And my experience of that expression of vocabulary choice, it seemed to me that this was someone who had heard their whole life trans women, evil, bad, no good, bad, and then discovered that they were trans and said, okay, I have to be a woman of trans experience.
Or not. Or not, because if that person didn't articulate that experience to you, then we're assuming.
Okay.
You know, it could be other reasons why. I think it's just one of those things of saying, this is how this person wants to be articulated as, you right? It's like, because someone else would be like, well, no, that's not me. I'm a trans woman. And she was like, and this person could be like, I'm a woman of trans experience. It is individual, and that's the thing we have to lean into. We have individual experiences. We don't have to be the same, you know? Okay, I'm gonna do a few more.
No.
Okay, this is another true and false. Polyamory is the practice of having one intimate relationship at once. One intimate relationship at a time or at once. Is this true or false? False. I heard you.
I'm looking for some stickers.
Let's go. All right, how about this one? Femphobia is the aversion, fear, and hatred towards femmes, but only includes cisgender, heterosexual, cishet women. False. Absolutely. Femphobia is inclusive to all femme identities. It does not have to be cisgender or heterosexual. Okay, let's do 2 more, because I want to give some more stickers. I
know, we're like,
stickers.
there's some pressure here.
Okay, here we go. An abbreviation for, this is multiple choice, an abbreviation for cisgender heterosexual. Is it A, SAGA? Is it B, LGB? Is it C, AC/DC? Or is it D, cishet? Again, an abbreviation for cisgender heterosexual. Is it A, SAGA? Is it B, LGB? Is it C, AC/DC? Or is it D, cishet? Okay.
I know what the answer is.
But you got a sticker, so don't say anything. What do you think? I think you heard it. What did you say?
I think it's cishet.
Yes, all right, we got it.
All right.
Okay,
you got
all
this.
right. So thank you for today. I'm just gonna give stickers out. Yes, thank you so much for today.
I thought you were gonna pull a fast one and have it be a D, all of the above, or something.
No.
Well, I've heard
I was trying to do the
cis, so-
acronym.
Thank you so much. I want to say Happy Pride. Also Happy Pride. You know, just if you are not in the community but an ally, just be a strong ally. I'm doing this thing. I'm really advocating about education. So I like to say, buy a book, gift a book. I think they're great Pride gifts. I think they're just great gifts, period. There's also like a young reader and adult version. So my goal wherever I go, I like to say, like, let's just keep educating. Let's keep celebrating and empowering. So my thing is buy a book, gift a book. You can buy it anywhere. Go to your local bookstore. If they don't have it, make sure they do. But you know, you can get it at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, of course. Was it Bookshop? So wherever. But just, you know, keep learning, keep educating. Yeah.
Do you have audiobooks?
I think it's on audiobooks too. Or if not, I know we have like an ebook, but yeah, I don't know. No audiobooks yet, not
I
yet.
can tell the computer to read it to me if it's an ebook.
Yeah, yes, it's an ebook. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Are these for me?